Take a seat. It's going to be a wild one. Overreaction Monday on a Wednesday. The Cincinnati Bengals. Are they in the driver's seat? Essentially, are they in the driver's seat to make the playoffs? Could Joe Burrow come back against New England? Let's talk about it. I mean, this is Cincinnati. Let's start with what the Bengals have to do to make the playoffs and why we think they're essentially in the driver's seat. It's pretty simple. Win your games against the division, and you got to beat Miami and Arizona. Apologies. I apologize. I was just about to say it's not asking a lot, but this is a football team that did just lose to the New York Jets and Chicago Bears. But it's not asking a lot when a team gets hot with Joe Burrow under center. It's not. Win those games, you're going to be 9-8. You can drop one to the Patriots, you can drop one to the Bills, and you're still a 9-8 football team. And how's that going to work out? As you look and say, hey, Baltimore, Pittsburgh still play each other twice. In the last 11 meetings between those two teams, Pittsburgh's won 8 of the last 11. I feel pretty confident in saying there's a very, very good chance Pittsburgh wins one of those, Baltimore wins one of those. Pittsburgh could win them both. Pittsburgh to me is not really a threat. You look at Pittsburgh, they're gonna get their brakes beat off all the way across the river when they play Detroit, when they play Buffalo. Those games aren't going to be close. Tack on a couple losses. You tack on a loss with the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers now have 7 losses. So if the Bengals beat the Steelers, they now have 8 losses. Nothing else has to happen. They're 9-8. They can win the rest of their games. Baltimore, again, they play the Bengals twice. They drop one to the Steelers. That puts them at 6 losses. You now just have to beat the Ravens in both games. That's a tall task. And I tell you what, if there was ever a time for Zach Taylor to save his job, this is how you're going to do it. You are going to beat the Baltimore Ravens not once, but you're going to do it twice. And you're going to do it with Lamar Jackson under center. You're going to go 6-0 in the division, and you will shut those naysayers down ever so quickly and extend your lifespan on this Cincinnati Bengals roster or on this Cincinnati Bengals coaching staff. Could it happen? That's the no strings attached. Do what you got to do. Control your own destiny situation, because that puts all 3 teams at 9-8. Bengals own all the tiebreakers at that point in the division. Bengals win the division. And how crazy would it be to say the Bengals win the division at 9-8, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, your 2 biggest competitors, the ones you still to this day probably fear the most because of the quarterback situations, their ability for their teams to get their defenses going, could be playing in your house. Could be seeing them in the first round of the playoffs, depending how those wild cards turn out. Now, I think the Chiefs creep up a little bit. Buffalo, though, because you would be the 4 seed and the other one would be the 5 seed, I mean, Buffalo could very well be a team that makes the playoffs as a wild card, because the Patriots just don't play anybody. They have Buffalo on their schedule. They got some high school football teams on their schedule. They just don't play anybody. Great chance they could win in the division. Buffalo's a wild card team. The Chiefs, they got 2 teams in front of them right now in the division. We know the Chiefs can go on a run. They probably will go on a run. What they have to do is, hope that the Chargers don't go on a run. Hope that somehow this Broncos team keeps winning football games with Bo Nick. What they're doing on the defense is ridiculous. I just keep imagining. Could you imagine slapping a defense on this Bengals team like the Denver Broncos with Joe Burrow? They'd never lose. How fun would that be? Nonetheless, how you put that in that situation, it's a year you have to win. It's a year you got to get that division. The AFC is so wide open. It's not like this very often with the horses in this conference. It is so wide open. And that brings into the picture Joe Burrow. That is why we look now at a 21-day window is open. This man's got 21 days to return and be activated from the injured reserve. That window is open. It opened early, by the way. A lot of people were thinking, hey, maybe Buffalo's pushing it. Second game against Baltimore, they can make it. And it was one of those things, off the bat, we even said, right off the bat, I said, this guy's playing Buffalo. I never questioned in my mind he was going to play Buffalo. I thought, hey, could he push it to Baltimore? Yeah, the timeline's a little earlier than what it's projected, but just knowing Joe Burrow, knowing that competitive, this guy was playing Buffalo. You was going to be at a point in the season where you wanted to win, this guy was going to play. And now I think you look at that and say, hey, well, you're at a point in the season, you got to win a division. If you beat the Steelers, Joe Burrow's got to play against Baltimore on Thanksgiving. Just knowing this man's work ethic, knowing the way he plays, and just knowing the situation. Joe Burrow don't want to come back. Joe Burrow's a competitor. He's going to want to play. Don't get me wrong. But do you think he wants to come back and play meaningless football? Absolutely not. And that guy would rather have his toe fall off next Sunday and then be out of the playoffs and sit here and play meaningless football. At least he went out there and said, hey, I gave him my all and played, tried to get my team there. Which brings up the question, and what we're not hearing anybody talk about, and the Bengals sure as heck ain't going to hint at it, because why would you give a team a hint that you're going to start Joe Burrow over Joe Flacco? You don't want to prepare for that. But it brings up the question, could Joe Burrow be playing against the New England Patriots come 2 Sundays from now? The New England Patriots, 2 weeks away. Joe Burrow would come back from injury. Even then, we're pushing, what was it, 57 days we're at? I mean, we're pushing a month and a half, 2.5 months. A couple weeks early. Still very possible. We know Joe Flacco ramped it up in 3 days. we know that he knows the offense. All it is being healthy and being ready to go. He's played with these guys plenty. He could be cleared tomorrow and play the next day because that's Joe Burrow, and he's going to be all right. Now, the question is, how does that happen? Couple of things, the thing that's always stuck in my mind, because as a Bengals fan, you don't forget that AJ Green year at the turf toe. It just felt like it was lingering. It was lingering. It's like, what's happening? The season is falling apart. And it was on a heater of a losing streak. Finally, he comes back after missing 3 games. The Bengals kind of rush him back, but it was just one of those things where if they lost, season was over anyway. He'd go out there, re-aggravate the turf toe, have surgery, be out for the season, and Bengals would lose. But they'd finish 6-10, so it did not matter. And an eerily similar situation now with Joe Burrow. Because if they lose to the New England Patriots, you might as well. The season is almost all but over. There's still the hope. There's still the slither. Because again, we did mention it. As long as they run the table, they can still afford to lose to the Steelers. They can afford to lose to the Patriots. You don't want to, because then you have to run the table. But at that point, they can run the table and still very likely win the division. Because then it's just them and the Steelers. As long as the Steelers win one against Baltimore. And it feels like the way the Steelers have been playing, and this is why you feel so good about the Steelers this week. You don't want to jinx it, but say the way the Steelers play, it's the same thing with Mike Tomlin every year. The quarterbacking situation, the offense is atrocious. The defense carries them to a good record to start the season. You're like, what are they doing winning football games? And then that starts to catch up to them and they start losing football games. We're starting to get to that point of the season. You'd like to believe the Bengals did it once, they can do it again against the Steelers. But if they can't, and Joe Burrow doesn't play, he can still suit up for Baltimore and absolutely play then. But you are absolutely pinned up against the wall, which is why, Joe Burrow's playing against Baltimore. He's absolutely playing against Baltimore. If the Bengals lose the next 2 games, the season's over if he does not win against, they don't beat Baltimore. He's playing. Mark it down. I think the question is, does he stretch it and play New England? Because New England's not an easy game. At the start of the season, that would be an easy game. New England is working teams right now. And could Joe Burrow find a way to play in that game? I think it's an interesting one because, the AJ Green thing comes up. But Patrick Mahomes comes up too. Patrick Mahomes gets the turf toe. Was it the divisional round? We're going to win the Super Bowl. It ended up, there was the talk how severe was it then compared to what it was after they announced it. It was obviously he tore the crap out of that thing and had a grade 3 by the end of the Super Bowl run. And had to have surgery out of it. He was, out 5 months or something. He tore the crap out of it. But he played through it. What was the severity at that point in time? They came out with a special cleat for him. And that says a lot where, at the beginning of the season, you don't want to force Joe Burrow to play through it because if he did re-aggravate, if it did get worse, then he's out for the rest of the season. It's useless. There's no point. So you want to get him back. You want to get him healthy because you still want to believe there's hope for the rest of the season where you don't rush him back. That being said, though, how close to confident are that he doesn't get hurt again if he can just play 1 week without taking too many shots? A lot to say, but Baltimore's defense isn't what it once was. To start to ramp it up, we'll see. But Bengals' offensive line's been better. Can we start to see him play through one game? Because, again, the big thing also about Patrick Mahomes and AJ Green, the difference, we know how important the footwork is. We know how much strain, how much pressure, how much work you're putting on your feet as a wide receiver. The starting, the stopping, the cutting, getting off the line. There's a lot more on it than I would think than a quarterback. Now, of course, you're going to use your foot. It is his left toe. You're going to use that foot to drive the ball down the field. You got to worry about an alignment or something stepping on it, but you're going to worry about that every week with stepping on it. But it's stuff like that where you wonder how much is it in game? Is the in-game pain, is there tolerance, or is it just the risk of re-aggravating it? Either way, it feels like that's a chance you take because, again, mind you, It doesn't matter if he can come back against Buffalo if you lost the games 3 games before because your season's over. Unless you're making a playoffs at 8-9, the season's over. So you're going to rush him back. And we don't have any history of a quarterback. Is there? I should be careful saying that. Knowing Joe Burrow's work ethic, I mean, there isn't too much history of a quarterback ruining his career with a turf toe. So he's probably gonna push it. And Joe Burrow's not getting younger. I hate this. This is the side. I was all hyped up thinking about the Bengals, and that got me thinking about Joe Burrow's age. This guy's pushing 30. We're running out of years. We are running out of years to be great. I mean, you're talking realistically, the end of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase's contracts could be the end of this Bengals playoff window. 4 to 5 years. Especially if they don't learn how to fire the coach and get a line that protects quarterbacks. Because he's just going to keep getting beaten around. Could he still be effective? Could he be? I just don't think, when I look at Joe Burrow, I look at that guy's work ethic, that guy's brain power, the way he plays the game. I think as long as his arm strength doesn't just fall off a cliff, which is often a problem for these older quarterbacks, I think he's going to be an elite quarterback still at 38. He's going to be dominant at 39. He can win you. I think Joe Burrow can win you a Super Bowl at 40. Again, it's the physicality. That's not the physicality. That's not the word. It's the effectiveness of that arm strength. It's the effectiveness of his ability to throw the football, because that football brain's going to be there. Can his body keep up with it? Can his body keep up with the game getting beaten up for the first 6 years of his career, 7 years of his career? That's scary to think about, but you got to think about it, and you got to think about how this is one of the most wide open years in the NFL. As far as the AFC goes, you want to make the playoffs. This is the year. If there was ever a year to make playoffs and feel like you had a great chance to run the table as much as anybody, it is this year. Again, because the Chiefs aren't as dominant. The Bills, they're a good football team. The Bills are a great football team. Every year, you hear a lot of talk about how much Josh Allen does, but that running game's elite. The offensive line's elite. The defense usually figures it out. They're a tough football team to play. They are. But for whatever reason, they just don't scare me. The Bengals go in there, and it feels like they just walk all over them when they play them. So couldn't say that because I got to play them this season. And nonetheless, though, you like your chances. We'll see, though. Love the y'all's thoughts. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.